And these aren't really tight, terribly tight. They're just holding a piece of plastic up. And they're not a millimeter thread pitch. They're a fairly large thread pitch. I'm not exactly sure what thread pitch that is. It's just the same thing on the other side. Let's see if I'm good enough to get it blind. Apparently I am. Sorta. Well, here she comes. You know, the best part about laying here is if we just glance at the diff over here, which by the way has this beautiful golden nameplate here that it's not gold, it's zinced, but cleaned that up because I refurbed the diff, but it's resealed and it's still seeping a little bit. It's like W124 diffs just love to seep, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it doesn't matter how well you reseal it. Anyway, back to the plastic cover here. We're gonna pop this guy off. And this thing can be a bit of a doozy. Oh, but this one's being nice to us. Well, sorta. These can be really gross, by the way, so eye protection probably is a good idea. All right, we've got our bolts exposed now. These two big guys are holding that SLS strut. Here's our sway bar. Here's the control arm link. There's a bushing in here we need to replace, and the other one is obviously adjacent of that. So I got to counter hold the bolt. It's a 17 on both sides. Oh, that's not what I want to do. All right. Zippity zoopity zoop. I'll go ahead and take them out. I wasn't going to take them out already, but they're coming out so nicely. The reason they're coming out nicely right now is because everything here is clocked and these haven't been loosened yet. So it shouldn't really be under any tension. So this one probably will be. If I remember correctly, this is a 14 mil. Okay, so 13 mil. If you have new hardware for this guy, you're technically supposed to replace this since it's a locking nut. But I don't have it and I've reused them. You could put blue Loctite if you're worried of the nut coming loose, but I really don't see why that would happen unless you're like tracking the car, I suppose. I think on a customer car I would 100% replace them, even though I don't see the point. But you all know when it's your own car, you're definitely not as cautious. Take the nut off. There's no washer here. And if there was, it was never there. So again, nut on bolt, good practice to do. Our sway bar is free, our strut is free. We just have a bolt here and a bolt on the other side to remove, and then the control arm will come out. Now, one thing I will say is I do have the spring compressor tool. I'll demo that in a different video. Get over to that. But since I have lowering springs in the rear especially, you can see there's no tension on the spring. So there's no need for me to compress the spring because once I drop these bolts, this will just come down and I literally can, there's nothing. So if the spring was under tension, and usually for most cars in the rear, you can get away with just dropping this usually really slowly and then pulling the spring out. But I would use a spring compressor. With the factory springs, I did use a spring compressor when I replaced these to the H&Rs. So yeah, I don't need the spring compressor for this. This has no tension. So once we loosen the two bolts in the control arm and drop it, we'll be golden. Okay, so now that we've removed the bottom bolts, we have a 17 millimeter flare nut and a 19 millimeter hose that needs to be broken loose. It's going a lot easier than the other side because this flare nut on the other side was completely seized. The system isn't under pressure right now, so we'll lose a little bit of fluid. We have what's in the shock as well. There it is. Okay, so I have my dad as the assistant up there. He's going to turn that bolt. Go ahead. My bolt's holding the SLS strut to the top there. I'll show that extension later. There it is. Okay, so he's got the bolt off. Here's I'll still go to just leave it. Here's the hole that it goes into. So now we need to remove this hydraulic line, transfer it to the new one. Okay, so we have a 22 millimeter nut and bolt. On this side, I like to crack it loose first. And it's spinning on the other side, but I like to just crack it a bit to get it loose. And then blind of the bat, clearly. And you can see this is dumb because if this slips, guess whose wrist is getting clobbered? We're gonna do it anyway. Ah, oh, yeah, see? What did I say? Nice. That's falling off. Classic. Take the nut off, leave the bolt on. Now up here we have a 19 millimeter nut and bolt. Same story. What's that saying? Same S word, different day. It's not very appropriate. Oh yeah. Spin it loose a bit. Grab the head. Well, I had one, but the battery toasted. Maybe in Milwaukee. If you guys love me enough. Okay, so I got an interesting washer on this side. Be mindful not to lose that. Okay. We're gonna push that bolt out, or rather it's gonna push itself out. It came right out. Boom. Remember, good practice is always to thread the nut and bolt together. All right, that's out. We're gonna manipulate the arm down here. Here comes our spring. I'll get that out of the way. And this guy should slip right out. And there we are. Now, this bushing on the control arm, not that bad, but the primary reason when I did the lowering springs and why I decided to do this big job is because of this guy. This is a common bushing that goes out on the W124s. A lot of people call it the squeaky bushing. If you have clunking in the rear or squeaking, it's usually this guy. It's kind of interesting. You kind of have like a double rubber situation here, and there's supposed to be a rubber bushing in here and grease. That's gone. So there's nothing left, no grease, nothing. It's just grit and grime. So you do need, I'm going to say this, you can fabricate a tool, but if you have luck like mine, this is probably seized on. So I have a tool, I'll link that below, that's used to press this bushing out, and I will show here in a second, I'll get the sway bar link out of the way, why that tool is important, why it's essential, because this knuckle has a little system to it, so to speak. So let's go ahead and press this bushing out. Get the new one pressed in, so I have it sitting in the freezer, so top tip. If you have new bushings you want to put them in the freezer because they'll shrink the metal. We know that. When things are hot, they expand. When they're cold, they contract. It will just help get the new one pressed in easier because it should be a smaller size. It doesn't look like it would make a big difference, but trust me, it does. It makes the installation a lot easier. So let me get the tool and explain how the tool works and why really you should have it. Okay, so here's our Benz bushing RNI tool kit. We're going to demo this with the old bushing. This is not the one from this side, it's from the other side. As you can see, it's gone. So let's get this opened up. Here's what it is. So we're going to unscrew this. Mercedes really likes to use this. It's actually kind of smart, I'm not going to lie. So a lot of bushings are normally pressed in. A lot of bushings are normally pressed in by, well, using a press. But Mercedes likes to use essentially what a counter nut is. So on one side, you're going to have, that's for putting the tool on. So let me demo this. So on one side, you're going to have the cup that goes into the knuckle. So imagine that this bushing is inside that knuckle like we saw there. My finger here, or hand, will be the knuckle. So I'm in there with the knuckle, right? You're going to have one cup that's going to be the perfect diameter to sit around the metal edge of the bushing, because you can't push on the center, it'll just rip it to pieces. Have to push on the outer ring. So that's going to press against it, but it's not, this is key now, the diameter of this is smaller than this one because you don't want to press this one in. So they'll sit like that. The bolt will go through. This is a forged bolt, by the way. Will go in, and it will lock in here because you don't want it to turn. Then you're going to have a large cup, because essentially what this is going to do is, as you're tightening the nut on this side, it's going to push this cup in, pushing this into the bigger cup. Eventually it comes out of the knuckle and falls into the cup. Now, that's kind of hard to visualize. Imagine that this cup is already on here and the nut is on here. It's kind of hard to do this with like limited hands. And this is the knuckle. My hand is the knuckle here. As this tightens, as the nut tightens on this side, we have the receiving cup. This is going to push, or rather pull. It's going to pull that bushing out of the knuckle. It's going to fall out, kind of like that, right into our cup, like so. So it falls into the cup. This is now, in the knuckle, which is my hand here, which would be on the car, demoing, and this is loose. So you can just pop this out. Now for installation, you're going to have this side pressed up against the knuckle. You can notice it's notched here. I'll show why here in a bit on the car. My hand's the knuckle. You're going to get your new bushing. You're going to slip it on. You're going to change this cup. Reason being is this cup is still the perfect diameter to push this in, as this, but as you can see, it's much larger than this bushing, and that's because as you tighten the nut on this side, it's going to press, and it's going to press it right into the knuckle, and then once it gets to the knuckle, it's going to hit it, and it can't go anymore, so you can't overpress these bushings with the tool. Then you loosen it, this pops off. This is on the knuckle, remember, this back end is recessed here in the knuckle. This bushing essentially is now pressed into the knuckle, and you're just going to pull your bolt out, bushing, and knuckle. So that's how it works. Super simple system. It's actually pretty ingenious. It is an absolute nightmare without the tool, and it's primarily because of this notch. Because a lot of people, what they want to do is they get two sockets essentially to mimic this. The problem with the sockets is that because it's not notched and it's not the perfect size as the knuckle, is this bolt will kind of sit crooked. So one thing you could do is you could force the bushing in to go sideways and you can damage it. The knuckle would probably survive in this case because it's a lot stronger than this, but it would damage the bushing and you would, mess up your bushing. The other thing that will more likely happen, or most likely what will happen, is this bolt will be under a lot of tension because it's going in crooked. As you're tightening it, it's going to snap the bolt. And I know this from experience because I took a grade A bolt the size of this, and I tried, and I knew it wasn't going to work because I saw it was going in crooked, but I decided let me just tighten it anyway. This was trying to press the bushing out, so there was no damage to be done. And I snapped that grade A bolt clean in half. So, highly recommend that you get the tool. If your bushings are relatively new, you could probably get away with making a tool. But the primary reason why I recommend a tool is I'm not worried about removing the bushing, right? You can burn them, you can cut them, you can do all types of methods to get them out. The problem is when you want to press them in, you do not want to go crooked. You want everything to be as perfect as possible. And that's what I can't replicate by building a tool. So I just had to buy one. They aren't cheap. They're like $100-something. But it is worthwhile if you're going to do this job. And I can use this cup for other systems. So it works out. But let's go ahead and implement the use on the cup on the actual car and we can see how it's working. Okay, so let's assemble the tool. Push that in. Lock the head of the bolt. Throw the receiving cup on. Take our nut. Do a terrible job in tightening it. There we go. We're going to hand tighten the nut so it stays in place. Make sure everything is lined up. And then we crank. So now what's happening? I'm tightening this nut, which is pushing the bolt through the nut. So the nut's stationary. The bolt is going, so it's going over the threads, pulling the bolt forward. Bolt can't turn on this side because it's locked in. This receiving cup is going to start pressing because it's being pulled by the bolt head. As it's pressing it or pulling it through, it's going to push that bushing into this cup here and fall out. You can see this is shrinking because it's pushing it through. There it is. Boom. Ta-da! There's our knuckle. Bushing is inside. All we do is just loosen this nut off. There we go. See, there's our old bushing. Just went inside the receiving cup. As you can see, this thing is toasted. So I'm gonna go grab the new bushing from the freezer. I like to clean this a little bit. This one's not dirty at all, so I just want to get that grit out of there. And then we're going to assemble the tool differently, and we're going to go ahead and press in the new one. All right, so got the bushing out of the freezer. You see it's a bit frosty, so we're going to work a little quickly here because I don't want that bushing to come up to temp. Now this notch, pay attention to this notch, because if you notice when I go to put this on, this notch, if it faces up, goes perfectly with the knuckle up here, because this knuckle is flat and round on the bottom side here, but up here there's actually more material. So this is flat and there's more material on the knuckle protruding this way. So you can see this allows it to be perfectly straight. And you can twist it around and see where it needs to sit. You can see there's a big gap, that's wrong. But this way, if you push it or press it, it's perfectly flat. So receiving nut goes on this side. Okay, so we're gonna line up that notch. This is a bit difficult sometimes to do with one hand. We're gonna take our new bushing, it's nice and frosty. Push it in by hand, obviously, right? As it's the Incredible Hulk style. Line that up. Put the correct cup size, so there's a different cup now, remember. It's gonna go over that rubber perfectly. Boom. Take the nut. Man, that thing is like frosted. It smells like ice cream. I don't want ice cream. There we go. Now all we do is tighten, not loosen, tighten. And now watch as that bushing gets pulled in.
On the other side, right? Can't go this way, it's holding it. Again, we're tightening the nut, it's locking itself on the bolt. As it's pulling, the bolt is coming forward, the nut is pushing towards that way. And this is going to press that bushing in.
As you can see, it's going really easily. Now it's got a bit harder. The bushing's already getting up to temp. Overall, it's going in pretty easily. Now we're just going to press it in. Keep going. Pretty much until we get to the stop. Now, this is pressed all the way. Can't go further. This is holding on this side. All we do now is flip this around. Boom. Crack it loose. Spin that nut off. And you'll see here. Take this off. Take this side off. Naturally get stuck on like a gazillion things. There we go. And there it is. Easy as that. And look at this. This bushing has absolutely no play in it. If I took a bolt, I can't hold this right now, but I could manipulate the bushing. You can see. But look how much force it takes to move that compared to the old one. This one is toast. And that's what's going on. That's where the clunking is coming from. So it's nice and frosty still too. So that's all it is. You can see with the tool, makes this job really like a 10-minute job. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do with the control arm. We want to replace our old bushing in here. So we need to find, here's a brand new one. I'm gonna get a frosted one, not this one in particular, but for demo purposes, here it is. We need a socket, it kind of works like that tool earlier, that's just big enough to hit the diameter of this, but smaller than the overall diameter of the bushing because we don't want to press the socket in. Trust me, I made that mistake once before. And we need a receiving cup that is loose enough for the old bushing to go in, and this one isn't really ideal. I'm not a fan of it, but it's fairly loose, but this diameter needs to be big enough to cup around, switch hands here, to cup around the outer diameter of the control arm here, but not touch the inner diameter here where this bushing's being pressed out. So let's see how well this is gonna go. I don't know if this is gonna go well at all, but hopefully I don't mess this up. Okay, so we have a receiving cup down here. We're using a really small socket that just pushed that inner piece of the rubber. So what should happen is it should just rip it right out. So let's see if that happens. There she goes.
Rubber is strong. Well, there it goes. Okay, looks okay. Also, notice the chrome sockets probably isn't the best idea, given that it's shattered. But I'm going to say the rubber probably ripped its way out. So let's loosen this and see what happens.
Yep, there it is. Let me rip that out. Okay, so our socket's just stuck in there because it's stuck on the rubber, but there's the rubber and that inner, I guess what we call, I forget what we call this, the inner section of the bushing. So when I'll hammer this guy out, or I could just press it out, or it should just come out with a hammer. So I'm gonna beat this guy out here, and then we'll get that outer ring pressed out and we should be good to go. Okay, so knock the socket out. You can kind of see, there's that outer ring in the bushing. This is the control arm here, the silver part. So you can see that socket here is pressing on perfectly around that ring. So that's the perfect size. We just gotta get this out. Now there's a few options you could do here. You could cut it. You know, that would, you know, cut it in two places and then shatter it. There's, you know, there's different methods. We're gonna try to press this out. So this will also let us see. So this should be our inner size. So it fits on there pretty well. We're just gonna have to straighten it up. Be very careful not let it go crooked. That's gonna be a challenge doing this by myself. And this shouldn't get pressed into the hole because it's smaller than the diameter of the outer race of the bushing, at least in theory. I'm being stabbed in the ass. Oh my god, I got like a metal splinter in my ow. That hurts. Oh my goodness, not all this now. Oh my. Okay, this is a disaster, but as you can see, I went and cut this in 4 places to flatten it in so that the inside socket doesn't, it can't slip around and push it out. It's pressing it out. It's coming out on this side. There's a lot of popping. I'm kind of hoping the control arm doesn't get damaged in the process, though it probably is going to. Would not be surprised, but at this point, it's already too late to turn back, so we're just gonna keep going. Should be good. Okay. Oh, wonderful. Wow. Okay. Well, gotta knock this loose, but it looks like it pushed it through. So I'm gonna get that off, and we'll see how bad the carnage is. Hopefully, it's not bad. Okay, so here's what's left. We've got pieces of the bushing in here that I'm gonna have to take out and clean up. That's gonna be fun. They're not really pressed in. They'll just get hit out. We've got, I guess, what's remaining of the bushing. There it is. And there we go. There's our hole. Thankfully, not damaged, it seems like, at all inside. So, now we just gotta press our new bushing in, and then should be good to go. Okay, so here's the setup. Got a tiny bit of grease on it, as specified. Yeah, that's it. We're just gonna press it in and hope it's going in straight right now. So
Going good so far. Pretty easy. I'm gonna stop right when that lip is on the outside. Right.
There we go. New bushings in. Oh, that was brutal. Oh, that was so brutal. I don't want to do that again. Okay, so here's what we have, our old SLS strut. So it kind of looks, as you can see, like a hydraulic jack, because it kind of acts like that. So without getting too complicated, inside this there are bypasses, and it has a shock absorber function. But these are pretty neat because due to the hydraulic system, they can pretty much, when you put a lot of weight in the car, it self-levels. There's a leveling switch on the bottom of the car that's connected to the sway bar. And it will pump fluid in here, and because this is hydraulic, it's very strong. So you can actually increase the towing capacity because of this, and among other things. Towing capacity isn't just rated to your shocks, of course. But it is a really neat system. I really do prefer the hydraulic system that Mercedes has over the airbags, because airbags leak all the time. These are pretty stout. They don't really go bad for a really long time. I think what kills them the most is this little harmonica here, the seal. As you can see, this one's completely deteriorated, which then leaves this piston exposed to dirt, grime, and all types of things. And I don't really see any scoring on here. I can't really feel any. I can kind of see a little bit of marks. It's really hard to pick up on camera. But what can happen is, what I'm worried about is that if you get dirt inside of here and it kind of collects, is it can get on this piston or this shaft. As the shaft is moving up and down, it can score this, and if this gets scored, then fluid will leak past it, and then you have issues. So I think the best preventative maintenance you can do for this is replace your fluid on time. And if you see that your accordion is damaged, replace the accordion. It seems like they have these like little circlip things here. These little clips just spread open. I'm not sure how they get the accordion on. I would guess that they get it on from the bottom, just slides up. So that's what I would guess. But anyway, so here's our new one. Accordion's in there. They are pre-filled with a little bit of fluid, which is good. You don't want to run them dry. But of course, the system's very pressurized, so as soon as it turns on, it's going to pump it in. Now, I already have a line off, and I'm going to get into why I have a line sitting here, because I ended up breaking one of these lines on the other side when I was taking the old strut off. But luckily, I had some spares, so I would probably have to go to a shop to get this hydraulic line made. But anyway, when you're breaking this line loose, there is a crush washer, a copper crush washer, that's going to sit in between this and this surface, and that's your sealing. This acts like the sealing surface, essentially. So if you do this job, you're going to need crush washers. I don't know the part number off the top of my head. I just got lucky because in this bag I have a bunch of crush washers that I ordered a long time ago when I was doing the fuel pump stuff. So it just happens that they're the same size. So I'm not entirely sure what the part number would be for that, but go figure that I got lucky. I didn't think to order those. But it makes sense. This has to seal somehow. But these are usually pretty seized on, at least in my case. So for getting it off, what I ended up doing is I grabbed vice grips. Let me shrink this guy down. I take vice grips and I hold it here as a counter, and then I put the 17 mil and I crack it loose. So the vice grips are holding this way, or we're going left to loose. So vice grips would be on the ground holding them down like this. You'd crack it this way. And that's how I got it off. I don't see another place to counter hold or anything, so really that was the best place. You can probably get grips here. This is all really thick steel. You do not want to grab anywhere here near the shaft. Obviously, if it has the new accordion, you can't do that. And while when we're tightening this, you'll see me with the vice grip method on the new one. But I grab it up here because primarily this is the part that goes up through into the trunk, and there's a bolt right here that holds the strut. So if this gets a little, the vice grips will eat into the metal a bit. I'm not really too worried about any damage here, and I doubt you'll be able to break this. It would suck if you did because it looks like this is cast, but it's fairly strong. So, and again, when you're tightening it, my mistake. When I was tightening it, I went a little too hard and snapped this thing clean off. So I'm not entirely sure what the torque spec is for tightening these. I wasn't able to find them, nor do I have like a crow's foot or something that would allow me to measure it. I just do it till snug, and then if it leaks, I'll snug it up a little more. And if it feels too tight, it's kind of like that intuition. You just end up loosening it. It could be the new crush washer didn't seat properly or something. So anyway, a lot of talking, but let's go ahead and get these guys into the car. All right, so on our new strut, let's go ahead and take this off. This is just a plastic cap they put in. It's threaded on with an O-ring. It is very stuck. Wow, okay. And then we're going to save this because I want to put this on the old one. And a lot of people are probably like, why are you keeping the old ones? Well, things break, so let's get a crush washer on this thing. Make sure your surface is clean. On both sides, that's brand new, so it should be clean. Now, the hard part, threading the old hose in, because this hose has been bent in this position for such a long time that it does not really want to thread its way in. This part is very challenging. You don't want to cross thread this, as you see that didn't grab any threads. And you don't want to bend this hose too much because you can internally kink it and damage it. So I kind of just straighten it a bit, and then this is going to take some finagling to get in there. So I'm going to do this off camera because it's probably going to take me like 45 minutes to get this in because I don't want to cross thread this and I don't want to damage the hose. But pretty much you want to start it. You want to pay attention to the angle. If it's going like this, it's wrong. If it's going like this, it's wrong. It needs to be perfectly straight with the strut. So that sometimes helps. So what I'm actually going to do is put this in the vice grip because I can't hold both of these at the same time. I'll put it in the vice grip, face it upside down, put this down, and then I can kind of squat and watch the angle that this is going in, because then I can bend this hose. Because when you're bending this hose, what's happening is it's wanting to shift this around. That's super easy to cross thread. So just be mindful when you're getting in there. You do not want to cross thread this. Take your time. Trust me, it's possible. It just takes a lot of time and patience. Okay, so believe it or not, this actually threaded on the first try. That never happens. Another thing you can do is you put in the vice grip, but just realize this and tighten it. So we're gonna take that 17, and I don't know if I can snug it enough because it is moving a bit. Let's see. Okay. All right, that's pretty snug. I don't want to go any further. I guarantee it's gonna snap. Hopefully the new crush washer will do its job. We'll know pretty soon if this isn't sealed right, because this is such a high pressure system that it will just come squirting out. Okay, here's the setup. I don't have an assistant right now, so I've got the jack on the bottom here. I've lined up the strut and just it's holding it up through that hole. That way I can get the bolt up there and thread it in. Line's clocked over here. We'll tighten that up. Once the bolt's up in there, we tighten this line, snug it up. That's it, your strut's in, it's gonna hang in place, and then we get our control arm in, snug that up, and then we have our thrust arm here that still needs to be put in. We'll put that in, and then we start torquing everything. Okay, so it's just a 13mm bolt up here. Make sure you have your washer and your rubber grommet underneath. I'm gonna thread it by hand. Cannot stress that enough, because you do not want to cross thread this. And I got really lucky, because this one went right in. That never happens. So it's got a good amount of threads. You'll know, there it is, it's tight. And of course, I can't really put that much torque in. This is a tiny little guy, so tiny ratchet. But it's snug, and I'll keep it in place while we're working down there. I just love when you pay hundreds of dollars for these things and they don't even come how they're supposed to. Oh my goodness. So you probably noticed that the bolt holes in the strut are facing this way when they're supposed to be facing this way. Easy fix is to turn it, right? So if you turn this, that'll turn, but whoever installed the harmonica here, if you look, if I do this, it's gonna twist the harmonica. So I have to remove this clip down here and then clock this, then reinstall this rubber seal. So, oh, this is just, can't win with this car. Everything is fighting me. So I'm gonna take this ring off, take the harmonica seal off, clock it, and I guess that's it. I'm just gonna get that ring off entirely so I can bring this down. And of course now it doesn't want to come down, because why would it? Why would it, you know? Why would it? All right, so we got it clocked. We've got the harmonica back on. Definitely got this on by asking really politely. I said, hey, please, can you go back on? And it did. That's 100% what happened. It was super easy. You know, just ask, and it just goes on. Can you believe that? Definitely wasn't a lot of force involved, but there we go. Now it's clocked the right way. So let's go get our control arm. Okay, so let's get our control arms in. Oh yeah, that's tight. Oh no, it's not tight. Oh no. Okay. Okay. Let's see how well this works out for me. Probably not well at all, but hey, let's try it. Come on. Come on. Hey, caramba. That's, there it is, there it is, there it is. It's a boy. Oh boy. Okay. Gotta line up the hole for the bolt to come through. Fairly straightforward. There it is. Big old nut on the bottom. And believe it or not, we are actually not gonna snug this right now. I'm gonna thread it. And then we got our washer up here, which I don't know why it sits like that. It's kind of weird, but it just does. There it is. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna hand tighten these. Then we're gonna go ahead and line up our strut, sway bar link over there. And then we'll pop our spring in. This should be low enough to allow us to just put the spring in without having to compress it or do anything fancy. Click. Okay, that's good. Get that out. All right, so I'm gonna dangle this guy in there. Bit of a tight fit. There we go. Just press down the control arm. I'll push it down. Let you get this guy in. Okay, that's good. Now, what we have to do is, obviously our strut is all the way over here. The holes are down here. You're probably wondering, well, how's that gonna connect? We gotta get a jack under here and pull this arm up because this has been really compressed down. We're gonna clock this to go at an angle. Let me get a light over here so I can show you what I'm talking about. So, you can see on the shock here, this is more or less, it's not perfectly straight, it's sitting like this. On our control arm, these two holes are sitting like this. This guy rotates, so I'll show you what we'll do here. We're gonna jack this up, so bring it up to height. Bring our sway bar link down again. You're gonna notice, hey, the sway bar is sitting in the shock. That's not right. That's fine. This actually goes in like this. It doesn't sit like this out here. So that's perfectly okay. Once this comes up, these holes will line up, and then we'll take just a socket extension and we'll hammer this part down. Okay, so I like to get the sway bar link in first. Always nut in the back. So bolt on the front. Yeah, okay. Hey, hey, okay, okay. Oh no, all right, well, almost there. Push her through. There it is. Put it on for now because I'm gonna get the bolts for this guy next. There it is. Oh, come on. Come on, you're so close. No. Okay, so you can see right there, these aren't lined up perfectly. So you have two options. You can get like a screwdriver and push it down here. We could try that. If it works, awesome, but it probably won't. Yeah, that's what I figured. Actually, no, here we go. The screwdriver's gonna break. And I'm gonna be, there we go. We'll put one bolt in. I think we'll give it a little bit of a love tap. There we go. Our washer on. Put our nut on. Oh wow, look at that. Look at that. Would you look at it? Would you look at it? Beautiful. That went right in. Okay, so we got everything in. We're gonna jack this up now. Actually, now these bolts, I don't think you have to tighten them they have no effect if it's down there or up here. So the bushings up here and everything on the arms, they have to be tightened finally, even the control arm, when the axle is essentially parallel to the ground, like the natural resting height of the car. So we're gonna go ahead and jack this up so everything is flat, and then we're gonna go ahead and start torquing all the arms, torque these down, and then we'll just connect the hydraulic line up here, and that's it. Okay, so if you can look in here, the axle is pretty much level. So this would be like the natural ride height of the car. And now we can go ahead and tighten all the arms. You want to tighten them in this position because this is really where the car spends most of its time. It doesn't really spend its time all the way down or all the way compressed up unless, I mean, I don't know what you're doing if that's the case. But this is the position it should be in to torque everything. So we're going to start with the big guy right here. It's 120 Newton meters, so quite a bit of force. We're going to counter a hole. It's 21 mil on both ends. Then we're going to tighten the 19 mil in the control arm back there. Then we're going to work our way around the arms, and then we'll tighten this hydraulic line, look everything over. We're not going to put the plastic caps or anything on now because, you know, I want to see if there's any leaks or anything from anywhere. So I'm going to keep all the kind of beauty covers off, so to speak. That's it. All right. All right, for the one in there. Now this one, I just kind of snug up because it is almost impossible to get a torque wrench in there. Taboo, I know. You gotta get this line on, so it's like a brake line. 17, 19 mil here. Counter hold, tighten this guy up on that line. Obviously we have to install calipers. I haven't done that on the other side either. And then we need to torque down the strut and the sway bar link here. Snug it up. Okay. Now the big guys. Okay. Am I lucky? I think I could just whack it and it clips in. I'm willing to bet it's not. Wow, that was a pathetic whack. Boom, baby.